Hey guys, it's me, Liv. I hope everyone's doing good out there. So today I am bringing you another holiday card that I am creating using my jelly plate. I'm going to start off with a base of Forest Moss, which is the distressed ink style, and go ahead and roll it all over. Then I'm going to take out a regular old paintbrush that is covered with water and go ahead and splatter it all on the base of this. Next, I decided I wanted to go in with some candy apple red, and I'm actually going to be using it for splatter, so I took it over here on my mat. I'm going to spray some water on it and then pick it up with that paintbrush and use it to splatter on, the same as you saw me do with the clear water before. I'm also going to do that with that same forest moss that I started with on the base, and then have those splatters are all over. Then I'm going to see what this ends up looking like. I think that's really one of the fun things that I'm finding about this gel press plate, because I never really know exactly what I'm going to be picking out, so it's kind of like a surprise each time, but it does add a really cool effect. Now look at that. I actually think that is super cool. So anyway, so now I'm going to move on to designing and creating a base for my card. I figured I would go ahead and bring out a little bit more of a red because it came out pretty pink, and which just was not what I was looking for. So I went ahead and edged out the card with some candy apple, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull out one of the new stamps that I received from Studio Light. So I'm going to be using my Memento Luxe in the red color, and also some of my Distress inks for the top color to go ahead and stamp this in the center of the card. I put that red Memento Luxe on the bottom of the card, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the Distress ink on the top layer, which really has more of the tree look there as I stamp it down. So once I've gone ahead and stamped that, I'm going to go ahead and stamp it 2 more times, and just so it's really rich, and then move on to creating some different textures for the base of the cards using some different stamping elements. Now I actually decided not to use a different stamp. I just went ahead and used the same exact stamp along the different edging of it to create those kind of elements that you see here. Now, my first thought was to go ahead and try to put this sentiment directly on here with some embossing powder. But the mistake that you're going to see that I made here to get this prepped for embossing powder was that the other ink was not fully dry. So it made it very hard for it to stick out. So please remember, before you put the embossing powder, make sure that your other liquid is dry, or else you're not going to really see it. So then I went ahead and tried it out. Didn't come out the way I wanted, so I said, what's the next step that I'm going to do to continue to recover this card? So I thought, maybe I'm just going to go ahead and restamp onto the card and see if that works. And with some of a Versaclair Nocturnal color it is, which is a pretty deep black. So I was hoping that that would be able to work. But again, I was wrong. So since that did not work, couldn't really see it, I said, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to put it on this layer. Let me just go ahead and wipe it off, and then I'm going to move on to trying one other thing to try to get that same sentiment that I really wanted on there. So I decided to take that same one to go ahead and just stamp it out in that ink that I had, the Versaclair, on the side, and actually just sponge it up a little bit. I did then felt it needed just a little bit more pop of color, so at this time, instead of stamping on that green, I'm going to go ahead and stamp with some black to bring it all together, trim out this sentiment on the card, and then I'm going to take my gel plate back out, because one of the things that you probably remember from the beginning of the video is that I didn't really pick up the ink along the sides. So I thought that I would be able to pick up some more of those colors so I can keep it fairly consistent with the paper on top. And what do you know? It kind of worked. I was able to get a lot of this color still up from the plate to keep it in that same type of color scheme. And then I just took out my candy apple red and went ahead and did some inking along the edges to bring out just a little bit more of the red that you see in the card base, get out any white, because white was not really in this color scheme that much, and move on into putting it onto the card. Well, what do you think? I think it matches pretty well. All right, was able to salvage that. Now let's move on to just finishing off the last bits of the card. I'm just going to go do some very simple trimming using two of my square dies that I have, my rectangle dies that I have here for my card. And then I'm going to go back and put it all together. So I went ahead and took that underneath part that has this now stitching that you see from the die cut that I used, and then I'm going to go ahead and actually take that smaller piece in the inside, mount it onto a slight little color border that matches the underneath base that you see here, pop it up a little bit, and add with some foam tape, because I do love foam tape. I think it has a nice little dimension to your card. Place it down, and then go ahead and go back to get that sentiment that I was striving to keep that color scheme in. Go ahead and put that down. I'm going to again use that foam tape to add another dimension here for this card, and then I am pretty much done. As I was looking, I felt like I needed one more thing, and I'm going to take out my noodle drops. Add a couple of noodle drops throughout the